Hi and welcome to the Homeopathy Health Show. I'm Atiq Bhatti, a fourth generation homeopath with over 20 years of professional experience in this field of healing. In the Homeopathy Health Show, I'll be talking all things homeopathy and natural, with guest interviews, tips and advice, and answering some of your questions. Homeopathy is truly a unique complementary system of healing suitable for all ages, young and old. I'd love to hear from you and welcome your questions on homeopathy and how it can or has helped you. Feel free to email me at health@liketreatslike.co.uk or visit www.liketreatslike.co.uk for more information. Whilst you're there, take a look at the Knowledge Academy and blog section, where you will find interesting information. Both sections are growing day by day, so always check back. So let's begin today's show on UK Health Radio, the world's #1 talk health radio, real feel-good radio. Hi, how are you? I do hope you're well, and I hope certainly that your loved ones are also well and in good health. It's great to be back for another episode of the Homeopathy Health Show with me, Atiq Bhatti. Now in today's show, I'll be introducing you to the homeopathic medicine called Okoubaka, often overlooked yet highly effective for a number of health complaints. In today's Natural Health segment, you can hear the second part of the interview with Deborah Campbell, a beekeeper based in Buckinghamshire in the UK. She'll be talking about the process of getting pure honey from the hive to the jar. And of course, my regular Time for Reflection segment will feature another timely poem on healing. Now, I'd like to introduce you to a homeopathic medicine by the name of Okoubaka. Yes, Okoubaka, not Chewbacca. Okay. Now, Okoubaka, the indications for this are gastroenteritis, intestinal infections or intoxication, and diarrhea. Now, Pekana, Germany, actually write about Okoubaka as follows. The remedy itself, or the medicine, is derived originally from the bark of a West African tree, and this remedy itself is used to treat acute gastrointestinal tract infections, especially those accompanied by diarrhea caused by contaminated food. So, Okoubaka is actually a very, very good remedy when it is complemented with Arsenicum album. And you'll know in one of the previous shows, I did actually speak about homeopathic remedies for food poisoning. And Arsenicum album is one of the chief remedies for food poisoning. To find out a bit more about this, just go to the New Year edition of Health Triangle magazine at ukhealthradio.com, and you'll find my article there on Arsenicum album and remedies for food poisoning. Now, coming back to Okoubaka, the remedy itself, it stimulates the excretion of mycotic toxins and speeds detoxification of the intestines. So basically, if you have food poisoning, unfortunately, it's not the best thing, is it, to be suffering from? It's horrible, actually. Okoubaka combined with Arsenicum album will actually work really, really well. It's a really, really good remedy indeed. Now, Colin Griffiths, who is the author of the New Materia Medica, the book, The New Materia Medica, Key Remedies for the Future of Homeopathy, and this is the first volume that I'm referring to here. Colin in this book writes about Okoubaka that the first reports about this tree surfaced 22 years earlier in 1972 in clinical anecdotal evidence collected by Magdalena Kunst, who had been using the 2x and 3x potency, and occasionally 1x or 4x. The original supply stock of the plant, and particularly the bark, was brought to France by Wilma Schwabe at the request of Miss Kunst. Now, Dr. Wilmer Schwabe, you will all be aware of. He's the founder of Wilmer Schwabe, the company itself that produces the homeopathic medicines that we see. There are, of course, many homeopathic manufacturers in Germany. Dr. Wilmer Schwabe is one of them. Now, in his book, Colin Griffiths writes, as far as the background, it's a very detailed report on Okoubaka, which is why I'm sharing this with you. So God bless Colin for his work and his efforts, especially in these two books. There's 2 volumes of the New Materia Medica, Volume 1 and Volume 2. So Colin writes, Okoubaka is native to the Ivory Coast in West Africa. At full height, it reaches 80 feet, while it is 10 feet wide. The tree is surrounded by legend, as it is viewed by the indigenous people as a plant of remarkable magical powers. Ivorians refuse to cut the tree or even to touch it. The indigenous people regard it as a powerful protector, and its different parts are used in healing, providing forest medicine. They believe that to wear a piece of bark is to protect oneself against accidents, to put it in the house is to guard against spirits, sorcerers and thieves, and that those with evil intent who come anywhere near it will immediately be struck down with convulsions. If the bark is macerated and added to bath water or as an ingredient of a lotion, it will act as the antidote to poison, and as a drink it will calm an attack of tachycardia. If it is used as a nasal inhalant, it is said to cure headaches. It is believed that if inhaled as vapor, it will ease oedema, which is swelling, and if used as a compress, it will cure a hematoma within 24 hours. Other ailments for which Okoubaka has been credited as a cure include the quaint but undefined retardation of schoolboys, allergic syndromes, gastroenteritis, cardiospasm, diabetes, food poisoning, the residual symptoms after an attack of colitis of the bowel, influenza, and tobacco poisoning. Now, I'm just reading these out. I'm not saying that you start taking Okoubaka without speaking to a homeopath. Self-treatment is never sensible. It's never a sensible option. This is just an introduction to the remedy itself. So further on, Colin writes that the following is a quote taken that was published in 1991, which is quoted by O.A. Julian in his Dictionary of Homeopathic Materia Medica. And I quote, following reports by M. Kunst and William Schwabe on the antitoxic and resistance-enhancing effect of this remedy in very low potencies, meaning 1x to 4x, the drug was used to treat 700 patients at Reutlingen District Hospital in Germany with surprisingly good results in all cases of drug-induced allergy or exanthema. The patients had not had corticoid or anti-allergic drug therapy, except for 3 who had been given clemestine fumarate without success. A good result was seen in 436 of the 700 cases, some improvement in another 111 patients, while there was no effect in 153. The results confirmed the positive effect reported by the earlier authors on cases of intoxication and diseases of the liver, gallbladder, and pancreas. It goes on to say that remarkable results were also seen with hay fever, hypertension, gastric upsets, and poor general health. Now, O.A. Julian writes, and this is the extract which is taken from O.A. Julian, but is mentioned in the book by Colin Griffiths. Okoubaka is not an anti-allergic drug, but the question arises as to how far exposure to toxic substances such as chemicals and environmental pollution is responsible for the increase in allergic conditions, many instances of hypertension, and poor general health. A number of individual case histories are given to encourage further investigation. And then O.A. Julian then goes on to say that no homeopathic proving had been conducted to date, though he cites a range of symptoms that have been recorded from clinical use of the remedy. Now, there is another article about Okoubaka, and this can be found in Science Direct, and it's written by Jean Lionel Bagot, MD. The title is Okoubaka, Obreville, a new homeopathic medicine for the side effects of chemotherapy. Now, it's a very interesting article, and it goes on to summarize, it goes on to introduce rather, and then summarize Okoubaka. But I'll just take some snapshots for you, just so you have an idea of what's written. It says that the homeopathic medicine Okoubaka is very little known in France. Discovered in 1970, its uses remain limited despite its availability in all the French pharmacies. It is only mentioned in O. A. Julien's Materia Medica in 1980. And then it goes on to say that the bark of this tree is traditionally used in Africa to combat tummy upsets and poisoning. It is frequently prescribed in Germany in low dilution, which is a D1 to D4, which is also known as a 1X to a 4X, to treat poisoning, whether from food, chemicals, or drugs. I must mention here that Jean-Lionel Bagot, MD, works in he worked in the palliative care department, and this is in Strasbourg in France. And this article that I'm reading to you from Science Direct, or taking the information from, was published in 2015 online. Now, Dr. Bagot, he also says that in this article, which is very interesting, he says, after presenting the various German provings within this article, I will give the full Materia Medica of Okoubaka and explain my experience in its use for supportive care. This is actually very, very interesting, because the article title is Okoubaka, a medicine to remove the side effects of chemotherapy. So fascinating indeed. It is a very lengthy article indeed, but it talks about the proving of Okoubaka. It talks about whether this is the new nux vomica of homeopathy, and it does mention Arsenicum album in there as well. But I will mention the conclusion, which Dr. Bagot has written. He says, if the main indication for Okoubaka is the prevention and treatment of food poisoning, chemical poisoning, or traveller's diarrhea, and infectious diseases, it has a place in supportive care to prevent and treat the side effects of chemotherapy. This really is, as I've said already, a wonderful remedy, effective for bouts of food poisoning, gastroenteritis. So again, in the Pekana Remedy Guide, Pekana are a manufacturer of homeopathic spagyric remedies in Germany, and they have indicated Okoubaka for the treatment of gastroenteritis, intestinal infections, and diarrhea. So Okoubaka, used together with Arsenicum album, makes a very powerful combination of two key homeopathic medicines, which can work very, very well indeed. And in my clinic, I actually use these quite considerably. Okoubaka are used generally for anyone who has complaints with the digestive system, because it removes any infections, it removes any intoxication. And intoxication can come from chemicals, it can come from the foods that we eat, it can come from pollutants as well. And as you're very well known, a large chunk of the immune system obviously is impacted if your intestinal tract is impacted. So gut health actually equals mental health as well. In many cases, not in all cases of course, but in many cases it does help to cleanse the gut so that you can find some sort of relief from any mental and emotional complaints. And of course, alongside that are the physical complaints as well. But if you'd like to know more, because there's only so much, of course, I can share with you on the show, if you'd like to know more, get in touch with me via my socials. So I am on Instagram, Twitter, I'm on Facebook and TikTok, and you can contact me by searching at Like Treats Like, or just go to my website and make contact with me, and I'll be happy to guide you accordingly. So that's the remedy that I wanted to introduce you to, Okoubaka, which is derived from the bark of a West African tree.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
we have the second part of my interview with Deborah Campbell, who is a local beekeeper based in Buckinghamshire in the United Kingdom. And last week we were talking about the life, I suppose, of being a beekeeper and what's actually involved, looking after the bees and the process of obviously making pure, delicious, succulent, tasty and very, very healthy honey. And so let's listen in to the second part today, which is me asking Deborah about the process when honey is ready to be placed, to be taken from the hive to the jar.
At a certain point, when that's full and they cap it, when they've got the water content to below about 18%, they will cap it, and that tells the beekeeper that the honey is ripe and ready to come off, and that's when I will take the bees off. And those frames, those boxes are very, very heavy, and that's when I get my son to help me, because it's quite difficult. That's hard work.
I can imagine, yeah.
And they are then brought home and extracted.
Now, what is that process of extraction? That was actually what I wanted to go to next, was once you know the honey is ripe, what's involved?
So once the honey is ripe, I aim to get it off the hive as quickly as possible. Now, different beekeepers will do different things, so I'm just speaking from my perspective. I like to do it when the weather is still warm, because that makes the honey runnier, and it makes it easier to come off the frames. It's brought home to my house, so it's very carefully brought home. So the first thing I have to do is to make sure that the bees are off it. So we put in what we call a clearer board, and it's a one-way passage for the bees. They can go down from the supers into the brood box, but they can't return up. So after about 24 hours, by and large, my supers with the honey have got no bees on. Now, when they have got no bees on, that's also very dangerous, because if I've missed any little holes that wasps or other bees can get into, those supers will be robbed. So I get them off as quickly as possible and bring them home. And I have my kitchen is turned into an extracting room, so everything is cleared and cleaned, and it's ready for extraction. I've got an electric spinner, which is basically a centrifuge. So I take the wax cappings off the top of the honey that the bees have put on to seal it, because they've decided that at a certain point it is ripe, and they will cap it. I need to take those cappings off, and the frames are placed in a centrifuge. The spinner,
Right.
They're spun, and the honey flies off the frames if it's nice and warm, and through a sieve to get the bits of wax, the bee's knees, and other bits and bobs that are on the frame that you don't want to go into the honey in your jar.
Yeah.
For me, the honey then goes into 30-pound buckets and sealed, waiting to be jarred and labelled. So I do some. It has to settle, so the bubbles come to the top, because obviously if you're spinning the honey, then a lot of air gets into it. And when I sell you my honey, you wouldn't want it if it was sort of frothy on the top, or lots and lots of bubbles in it. So it's left to settle, and then it's ready to be put into jars.
That centrifuge must be huge.
No, it's for the bee farmers, they are. Yeah. It's big. I forget how many frames mine takes now. Probably about 9 frames. So it's not huge. But it can. And I like to take the honey extract the honey as soon as I've got it home. I don't like it hanging around the place, because it can degrade. Flies can get into it, so I keep everything as clean as I possibly can.
I certainly would endorse that very, very strongly as a personal user of your honey, which I get from you every year. I get a number of jars and I use it every day in tea, especially in tea, or we just, use it as pure honey taken on a teaspoon. But it always tastes amazing. And I've had plenty of honey in my lifetime from different sources. So I can say that the honey that you produce is, when something is pure, when something is just absolutely delicious, and that golden look and the aroma that comes from the honey that I get from you is just so delightful. It's it's interesting though. You'll be fascinated to know that when I first got that this honey from yourself many years ago now, the kids wouldn't touch it, and now they love it.
So why wouldn't they touch it? Was it the strong taste, or?
Yeah, it was just they weren't honey. They weren't into honey. But slowly, what we found at home is we don't use sugar. We did use brown sugar if we had to, but white sugar is, I can't remember when we last actually ever used white sugar in anything. It's either honey, or if it's any baking or cooking, obviously it's brown sugar. So they are firm believers now and users of honey. So thank you very much. Actually, it's all down to you.
That's very good. As you know, though, because my honey isn't blended with any other types of honey to give a homogeneous taste, I can never guarantee. So a lot of people will come and say, well, I want exactly the same honey as I had the last time. I can't do that, because it is whatever the bees have foraged on. And sometimes the taste will be nicer to some people than to others, but it's certainly very, very different to honeys that are produced and are then blended, in a large scale.
Yes, absolutely.
So you can guarantee that the taste will be the same, but it's it is a mixture. If you're buying from I can't speak for every beekeeper, but by and large, if you buy from a local beekeeper, then you are buying from their stock, and it's not straight from the hive, because there is storage involved. So I'm selling my summer honey at the moment, but it's their honey as opposed to being blended with somebody else's.
And that is actually, for the listeners of the show, I would certainly urge, one, it helps support local beekeepers, but number two, the benefits, the actual health benefits, are greatly amplified when one is taking pure honey. Pure honey is known to work very, very well. As we know, pure honey is full of bioflavonoids and is antibacterial, it's anti-inflammatory, and it works very well even, applied directly to wounds. And these are tried and tested methods of healing, and taken internally, of course. So not only can it support the local beekeepers, but it tastes magnificent. You have to try it to believe it. And this is not Marmite. You're not going to love it or hate it. You will end up loving it. I can guarantee you that. So how many jars, I was just going to ask you, and this is not because I'm going to ask you for that many, but what's a good crop? What's a good season? What are we looking at jar-wise?
Well, I suddenly move into pounds, I'm afraid. Pounds in weight, pounds as in pounds and ounces. So this year, for my 10 colonies, I obtained a little bit in excess of 750 pounds in weight. And that, compared to a lot of people, isn't a lot. but it is a lot. It is a lot for me to store carefully and to market. Most of my sales are not are done through a couple of local shops from time to time, but mainly by word of mouth, and so that will just keep me going till it starts up again next March.
Right. How many jars though? That £750, is that like?
I do pound jars, so it's about just a little bit less than 750. But most of it's still in buckets at the moment. And when I say buckets, these are food grade buckets and sealed properly, so they're not just any old bucket. They're very carefully sealed and are airtight.
Wow, wonderful. Now, if anyone is interested in getting honey off yourself, what do they do? How do they get in touch?
Well, most people, like you, either email me or text me and come and collect. They place an order and they come and collect. Usually to my door. They come to my door to collect it. So that's the usual way that I that my honey is sold.
Okay. Deborah, just going to cut there. So can I just now mention your email address? Is that okay?
Yes, that's okay. That's okay.
Or do you want some other, or should they go through me, or how do you want to do this?
Well, perhaps first go through you.
Okay.
If you don't mind, just I mean, there may be nobody, because of course they don't really know where I am, and if they really want local, what they should really be doing is sourcing for themselves beekeepers that are local to them themselves.
Of course.
But having said that, because mainly because of travel, because you don't want to travel a long way to pick up a couple of jars of honey.
Yeah.
But having said that, there's not that much, within an area, there's not that much difference in the forage if you think about it.
Okay.
So it's very difficult. But I would, because we're not saying where I am, it's very difficult for people to gauge whether they would want to buy it or not.
Shall we give them an idea of?
Well, if we say Buckinghamshire.
I can't hear you. Sorry, cut off.
Say Buckinghamshire.
Yeah, Bucks. Okay.
I'm in South Buckinghamshire.
All right. Let me just say that, and then is there anything else that you want to share after that? So I'm just going to talk about how to get in touch. So get in touch with me, where you're based, and then
I think you should also. I mean, I don't wish to deflect from my sales, but I think you should also encourage people to check out local beekeepers, and very often they can be found by going into greengrocers, and you look at the labels on the honey, and so what I'm really saying is sort of support your own local beekeeper, not only but not really because of the forage, but because they are local to you.
Maybe you can say that it's going to carry more weight when it's coming from yourself.
Okay, I'm just trying to think.
Let's do that.
Okay.
Okay, so let me just okay, we're going to just start then. Now, if you want to get hold of Deborah, just email me and I will put you in touch with Deborah Campbell. If you email me at health@liketreatslike.co.uk, and of course you can find my contact information under the presenters tab on the UK Health Radio website, through my socials. Just search for Like Treats Like on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. But Deborah, for your information, as a beekeeper, is based in Buckinghamshire, so towards the southeast of England. Deborah, it's important, isn't it, to look after and to support local produce, and this certainly includes honey.
Yes, definitely. Whilst I wouldn't want to stop anybody contacting me to buy my honey, I really do think that you should think about your local beekeepers, and they're not that difficult to find. Very often they're in farmers markets or markets that are held, say, every Saturday in a local village or area. You can certainly in my area we have the Next Door app, and beekeepers will actually that's how I put my information out. I'll talk about what's happening in the season and people will contact me there. If you go into greengrocers, you can, if you look at the labels, then you will see where your local where your honey is coming from, and you can contact them direct if you want to, or even Google your local Beekeepers Association and email them, and they will put you in touch with their local beekeepers. Certainly my local association will do that. Very often people will contact them, will email them and say, can you put us in contact with beekeepers who have got some honey, and they will contact the beekeepers in the association, because we're and I'm talking really about the small the hobbyist beekeeper like myself, because we don't have a lot. Very often I've sold out by the time March comes. I may not this year, but very often I've sold out by March, and so I will refer people to other beekeepers, because you don't want to lose the contact with the beekeeper. You don't want to lose the person who wants to buy this sort of honey. So you will pass them on to somebody who you know is producing good honey as well. So I would say explore your own area, and contact your local association.
I think that's really, really important. Just like we know that we should support the local butchers, the local greengrocers, is very important because it keeps the circle, and it keeps the circle going. But it's also very fair. It's nice to have that. I can give you my personal example that me dealing with yourself. I love it. I love phoning you. I love getting in touch, and I love collecting that honey physically. I always make an effort to come, and it's usually very late, so I apologize. Very late in the evening, I know, but it's just such a nice feeling to, one, the product is pure, but number two, it's also, you feel good because you're supporting somebody else, and it's based on referrals. So as a practitioner, I know 70% of my patients are referrals from others. Somebody has got better, they've told somebody else, and it just carries on. And it's the best feeling, it's the best way, because if you help one another, then it ultimately leads to collective success, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. And it's a nice feeling for the beekeeper as well when you're getting people coming, when you get returning business. It's good, and a relationship builds up with the people who are buying from you, and it's good. It is a nice feel. It's obviously not as easy as going to a supermarket and picking up the stuff from the shelves, but it's just another way of shopping.
Well, I would say, and those who are very interested in local honey now, that just pick up a jar of local honey, pick up a jar from the supermarket, and do a test, and I can guarantee you the difference you'll find in the pure honey is just amazing. But the proof is in the pudding, and I would suggest you try that, and then you'll be pleasantly surprised, and you will be lifelong devotees and users of local pure honey. And it is available, like Deborah has said, from local beekeepers around the country, in fact.
Yeah.
Deborah, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm delighted that you were able to come on the show. Thank you so, so much. It's been very educational, and I'm sure the listeners have found it very, very knowledgeable and useful indeed.
Thank you very much indeed. It's been a pleasure being here.
Hi, this is Atiq from the Homeopathy Health Show. I'm here to help and support you in your health and wellness journey, to answer your questions on everything homeopathy and much more. To get in touch, contact me via my email health@liketreatslike.co.uk or visit online at www.liketreatslike.co.uk. You can also find me on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram by searching for Like Treats Like. Or just visit UK Health Radio online and you'll find my contact information under the Presenters tab. Homeopathy is a wonderful natural complementary system of healing, so let's work together for your health, wellness and vitality.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
Now, just before the regular time for reflection, let me answer some of the questions that you have very kindly sent in. So I received a wonderful question. It says, you said in last week's show one of your favourite remedies was arsenicum album. It says arsenic here, which is also how it's referred to, but the remedy is arsenicum album. I would like to know, what are the most common conditions you treat? That's a really good. Well, thank you for the question. It's a really good question. It's really difficult to answer because every day is different. But to give you a broad example, it could be anything from coughs, colds, flu, people suffering from rheumatism, and joint pains. Fertility is a very big one, alongside PCOS, which is which is called polycystic ovary syndrome. I've treated a great many people from around the world who had issues with conceiving, and with the homeopathic treatment, by the grace of God, they were able to conceive and have healthy babies with no complications. So that's a very it's becoming more and more common, sadly, and there are various reasons, and perhaps I'll go into those in a later show. The other things I treat are acne, spots, eczema, which is a skin condition, thyroid disorders, so this is an underactive thyroid or an overactive thyroid, and nervous weakness is also another one. So nervous weakness can be a result of lack of exercise, emotional, mental complaints or trauma. It can be to do with just a lack of nutrition or malnutrition in some cases. What else? So nervous weakness is becoming quite common actually now, and also a large chunk of my time is taken treating mental and emotional complaints. So treating and supporting those with mental health conditions, or those who have emotional conditions. And it's a myriad, so I don't want to put them into boxes as such. But every patient has, conditions. Everyone has some sort of ailment that they're dealing with at the time. So it's just a matter of looking at how best to treat. As far as mental health and emotional conditions are concerned, homeopathy is absolutely fantastic here, and I treat a great many people with success, where they are able to move on with their life. They've come out of depression, fear, anxiety, some sort of trauma. Alongside trauma, you've got stress, lack of confidence, panic attacks, and there's so many conditions out there. As I said, I don't want to label them as such, but that sort of should give you an idea. What are the other things that I treat? Toothache is very common. Sciatica is another one. Edema, cleansing for the liver and the kidneys. UTIs, which are urinary tract infections. Gallstones, kidney stones, fatty liver, As far as the other areas are concerned, eye infections, you've got ear infections. Again, it depends on the season, but these things, sort of come and go throughout the year, don't they? At one stage or another. And carpal tunnel syndrome seems to be increasing because we're spending more and more time using the computers, using keyboards, mobile phones, and this is, of course, not the best place to be in. And this can create a lot of strain there on the hand and the wrist itself. Nail disorders, fungal infections, which can be internal, could be on the nails, athlete's foot. I can actually go on and on and on, but this is just a very sort of, I hope it's a brief example of some of the conditions that, I'm sort of faced with helping people with on a day-to-day basis. So I hope that answers your question. Now, the remedies to successfully treat that are hydrofluoric acid, silicea, which is also sometimes referred to as silica, and thuja, which is also referred to as thuja. I like to just say thuja. I get very confused, and I'm going to go off on a tangent here, but I just wonder sometimes spelling could be easy, isn't it? It could be made easier. So reading, for example, and Reading, which is a place in Berkshire, are both spelled the same, aren't they? Reading and reading. So reading almost sounds like R-E-E-D, read-ing, rather than red-ing. So tomato, hey? Anyway. The remedies I've mentioned, so silicea, thuja, hydrofluoric acid, are used as a combination, and they're very, very effective indeed. Now, one important point is that silicea should not be used if you've had any type of hip replacement, knee replacement, any stents, or you've had screws fitted for your joints, and other surgical procedures. Always check with a qualified homeopath first, and also double check with your GP. The reason I say that is silicea is a well-known remedy. It actually is well known in some parts of the world because if you eat fish and you get a fish bone stuck in your throat, silicea is the remedy that will bring that fish bone out. So silicea expels any foreign object. So just bear that in mind. But if you're fairly healthy and all you have is just disorder with the nails, then these three combined will work very, very well indeed. Complementary wise, alongside this, you should check on your nutrition. Vitamins or supplements should be taken, and some sort of mineralizing tonic. So, for example, Dr. Rekaweg's alfalfa tonic is really, really good, and it's basically a booster, nutritional booster for the body itself. It has a number of remedies in there, which include Avena sativa, cinnamon, ginseng, magphos, and calcphos. So really, really good. That remedy generally is used in convalescence as well for children who don't eat, or they're stubborn, or they just don't eat. It's very good for conditions of anemia, and like I said, very, very good for growing children overall. So I hope that answers the question, and thank you. If you want more information, of course, just get in touch with me through my website or my socials, and you'll find my contact details, of course, there. So let's move to time for reflection now with Poems of Healing. And now it's time for reflection with Poems of Healing. This one is called A World Within. No one knew her deep pain, her hidden tears, her fast-beating heart. The masks protected her. She didn't need the wrath. Her world within was hers. No one knew the struggle, the daily chaos from which she emerged to reach work, the chapter she closed before she began another. Drowning the self in the intensity of work, experiencing the momentary pleasure of something well done, This was her only relief. No one knew the labyrinth in which she was struggling to keep afloat, the puzzle she was trying to complete. Her world within was only hers. The evening commute was time for preparation, to paint the smile back on her face, to fluff up the heart that was deflated, to make it all right for the little one who eagerly waited. Her different masks for the different stages, her different worlds, each one carefully crafted to perfection, because no one knew her world within was only hers. This poem was written by Reshma Agarwal, published in Sauti, Poems of Healing by the United Nations. So that brings us nearly to the end of today's show. I do hope that you have found it beneficial and useful, engaging. And next week, coming up, we'll be continuing with the series on the history and development of homeopathy with my short biographies of leading and eminent homeopaths. We'll be looking at another eminent homeopath during the time of Dr. Samuel Hahnemann, or just after, rather. And we'll have time for reflection, of course. I'll be answering more of your questions and going through some key remedies for your well-being. So until then, I do hope that you have a wonderful next week, full of blessings, full of joy, prosperity, and of course productivity, which is very, very important. I do hope you've enjoyed the Homeopathy Health Show here on UK Health Radio, the world's #1 talk health radio. Tune in next time for more things homeopathy, interviews and segments on the healing possibilities that homeopathy can bring you. And don't forget to visit UK Health Radio online at www.ukhealthradio.com to see the many other amazing shows available to listen live and on demand. Or why not download the app from the iOS and Android stores.